Welcome back. You're listening to another episode of the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kluba. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at What is Humans podcast, on TikTok at What is Humans podcast, and on YouTube at What is Humans podcast. Today, Shane and I are discussing intentional spontaneity. Enjoy.
Welcome. You're on the What is Humans podcast. If you're new to the show, this podcast is a conversational podcast where my co-host Dennis and myself, Shane, have conversations about everyday life, conversations that are meaningful to us, around personal growth. Hopefully, by these conversations, you can find some value in them as well. And most importantly, we are experts in almost nothing. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we are talking about intentional spontaneity. Mm-hmm. So this idea came to, I think I came up with this idea, was really around how we can be more intentional. I think I need to relate it to the feeling to kind of describe it, like specifically spontaneity, like the joy that comes with spontaneity of like random things happening, of being go with the flow, like four different, parts of your day or life. And we've been talking a ton about intentionality of putting rigor and structure into our days.
Yes.
And I think of these in opposite spectrums. And I think it's something interesting of maybe we can be intentionally spontaneous. Yeah. So this is kind of the idea. I'm probably going to say spontaneity wrong. It's really hard for me to pronounce a lot. But yeah, what did this mean to you?
I think the biggest thing that you kind of mentioned, which was a really good, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure, is go with the flow. But it was this idea when you mentioned feelings that it was literally last Friday or Saturday or something. And right now, like Shane had mentioned, we're going through, this time in our lives where we're really focusing on having a routine, having structure.
Sure.
We're both training for marathons right now, and we, are very intentional about what we're doing with the podcast and with our own work goals and life goals, et cetera.
Trying to.
Yeah. Exactly. Doing our best, not experts. And on that Friday, we had been so good. We had done so much. And there was this itch. It had been raining in Los Angeles. There was this itch to really just kind of go a little crazy, do something a little wild. But at the same time, I had the restraint feeling of I don't want to, lose or regress from any of the progress that we've made thus far, or regret any decisions, the next day, et cetera. And so it really sparked this idea that Shane had originally talked about of how do we build in moments, times, events, activities, et cetera, that allow for that creativity and spontaneousness that still live inside of a structure.
Or live inside us. It's like I know that feeling and experience in times of my life where I'm, more wild and I'm very go with the flow and open for, new ideas and experiences. But at the same time, I know the type A or the very disciplined individual that has to have a routine, has to have, focus. And I think there's amazing experiences in both for growth. But also I think that if you live in one of those buckets, it could be detrimental if you're only in that bucket.
Yeah. So good. I was going to say, we're both very, for the most part, go with the flow, I would say. We can be.
Yeah.
And we're trying to implement more type A discipline, structure, et cetera. I was just thinking to myself, it's funny when I think of people that are very type A and want to always be in control and know what the next step is or what they're doing later, that a lot of times I think instills anxiety or, fear when things aren't structured, planned out, et cetera. Whereas for us, at least in the past, it's very much been like whatever happens, happens. We felt very confident that whatever, we could make it fun, or we could take on whatever challenge was coming. As we've become more structured in our life, etc., do you feel like you still have that feeling towards, spontaneity, or, there is no plan, there's no set goal?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like that gives you anxiety or fear if, you don't have a plan for what the night looks like or the next morning or etc.?
Yeah, I think both.
Yeah.
It's like if I am so deep into my routine,
Yeah.
I get very frustrated, when the littlest thing goes wrong.
Okay.
When one of the items is missing, when something doesn't go to plan. But I also have that within me, or there's days and maybe I'm in a better mood, or maybe I'm just more capable for this challenge of, so what, like, no big deal. Like, it's just life. It's things that we often talk about, in these seats, but I don't necessarily want to blame one behavior or like highlight one over the other.
Yeah.
I think that in different days, you're going to be experiencing different things.
Yeah.
You're going to get that anxious feeling of when things don't go as planned. But there's also going to be the very carefree, I could care less about this plan.
Yeah.
Let's just see how it goes. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
I've seen both. So I just wanted to maybe ask is like, how do we pick out the benefits for both of these? Or can we? Or maybe we should be asking, what are, some of these benefits that you've seen in your life of that carefree feeling versus that disciplined feeling?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think that in the back of everyone's minds, and mine and yours as well, at least mine for sure, is I know that I'm a better individual and person when I plan and I have a plan and things execute and go according to that. Typically I make the best decisions, etc. But I know that especially through my work in being in creative, there is, like, I have felt so free in moments where I don't have on a night out, when things just magically happen. Aren't those some of the best nights that
Sure.
you notice, is when things kind of unfold? But I would argue that those are rare, and that things magically unfold and they create the best happenstance of nights, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I was going to say is I think that a lot of this, you mentioned it, there's going to be this balance of both. You can feel anxiety and pressure, or you can feel relief, if there's no plan. But I think a lot of it depends on our attitude going into situations. We've talked about, when you mentioned, like, if you have a routine and then one thing goes wrong, there's a big difference between the ability to roll with the punches and be a problem solver, right? And then there's another difference between, showing up with a great attitude. Maybe somebody else has decided to plan the night and you don't know,
Sure.
you've let go of the reins a little bit. And you're like, hey, Sarah's gonna, they chose the dinner spot. They are going to decide what activity you do afterwards. Then it's about coming with this great attitude of, hey, I'm up for whatever, and I'm going to have a good open mind about things. And so I think that a lot of it is dependent on having that great attitude when things come up of either the spontaneity, where, there is an intentional spontaneity, you don't know what's going to happen, or there's your routine. And in that moment, you have to have the creativity to maybe get yourself out of something you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I love that you highlighted the importance of attitude entering these situations. And from that attitude will result in the experience itself.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good or a bad experience will be determined off of your attitude.
Yeah.
I think it's also important, the other side of this question and topic is being intentional.
Yeah.
It's like I also see those nights or days where, we don't have the plan in place and I'm being fully spontaneous. Things can go too far or too, it's maybe I have a bad habit or a vice that I didn't want to indulge in,
Yeah.
or I had this habit of, or a diet that I was following, or a run I had to do that I missed because I was so spontaneous.
Yeah.
And I wasn't intentional about my day and didn't have a plan going into it. What would I do in that case?
Yeah.
Like, how do I blend these, if possible?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, and the first thing that I wanted to address is exactly based off of your conversation was, and we'll probably get into this within the hows, but I think when we're talking about intentional spontaneity, and even when it comes up unintentionally, right? A friend, is planning something, or it's a surprise.
Sure.
God forbid there's a surprise birthday party or something,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Throws off your whole week, right? We had one of those recently, but it's the thing where there have to be boundaries around your intentional spontaneity of, hey, here's the deal.
Guardrails, boundaries, yes.
Exactly, where it's like, I don't know where the night's going to take us, etc. But I have a goal, a plan. Now, whether you stick to this or not, that's totally a whole different story on execution. But it's like, hey, if we're going to go out, I really don't want to be out past 1, because that would prohibit me from potentially doing the run tomorrow, getting at least 6 hours of sleep or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have those, that definitely leads to what you were saying of too many drinks, no hours of sleep, etc.
Yes. It's like putting rough guardrails on of, hey, I need to accomplish these things, or I want to go see these friends, catch up with the people that I wanted to catch up with. Have like a rough structure where you can still be flexible within that, and be spontaneous within that, instead of just being so go with the flow, not having a plan. I think that knowing from my own experience, how I would take that was, I would just fall to the habits or behaviors, or have a night that, maybe doesn't end in a good experience, or a day that I don't accomplish the things I want to accomplish. So I think having that rough structure, like you said, or guidelines, or rules, will be super impactful if we're going to try and be intentionally spontaneous.
Yeah, and we've tried to do this more and more, because I think that we don't just want to, put it to just drinking or going out. But you mentioned, catch up with the friends you want to catch up with, and then having these guardrails. Something that we found a lot of, I would say, success in lately, especially on this journey of trying to have more structure in our lives, is we've kind of found that things that work really well for us, I'm speaking, but I think Shane would agree, is it's like if you go out to a certain place, you're going to meet somebody, or there's an activity happening, there's almost those set guardrails in there. For example, if you're going to watch a game with your friends, the game ends after 2 hours. If you're throwing a Super Bowl party, there's an end point.
Yeah.
If there is a show that you're going to go see, there is a end of the show. And that makes things kind of come and fall to their natural end, in which you're not left to
let's go chase more fun, dopamine,
ecstasy, whatever. Yeah.
Of all the all the joy that the night you thought should be, so it's like, when I see it as how do we be intentionally thinking about fun, it's like you need to understand that it's not something that can be chased.
Yeah.
Like another drink won't solve it.
Yes.
Another bar won't solve it. Another, indulging in that behavior of seeking and chasing won't bring that joy that you're seeking. It's so important to bring that attitude, like you said, to the night, to the day, and be able to be present with your passion or hobby or thing that you're working on, or it's the people that you're meeting with, the loved ones in your life.
Yeah.
And if you can be there, that's where that joy and experience will come from, not from expecting how a night or day should be, and constantly having to chase that down. Mm-hmm.
You said it so well, and such a great point. I was ecstatic when you mentioned it, but like you said, that attitude, you will attract, if you're open to what the night can be, what this conversation will bring, what this, catch up will, come of, those experiences, the fun, quote unquote, will come to you. The people will come to you that are open for a good time, spontaneous. You can't make other people open to adventure, to, new experiences, to new connections. All you can do is be that yourself. If you are that yourself within those guardrails that you kind of set out, those experiences, I think, will come to you.
Yes, 100%. Let's get into our house.
Yeah.
I think we talked about some already.
Yeah. I think maybe the first thing that we should do is maybe talk about like those loose guardrails, maybe like, the plan, just to, when we talk about our structure and our week and our days, usually I feel like this comes up within the weekend.
Yeah.
People have more free time.
I think a guardrail that we should be thinking about is like, have like a rough reason or a why as to, are you, the people you're hanging out with, like, are they bringing value? Like, are they important to you? Do they bring you joy? Like, if not, like maybe that's hey, no, I can't make it, but appreciate that. Or it's a tough decision that you have to make on saying yes or no to things. Yeah. So I think that first understanding of what's the reason for meeting up, or what's the reason for doing this goal, or pursuing this this new skill you're learning, etc., is like kind of have that rough reason why as to why you're doing it.
Yes, it's a great point, just to speak to that, as well as like having your why, and you mentioned it, the goal of this adventure, this thing that you're doing. If it is to catch up with a friend you haven't met in a while, that should be the goal. It doesn't matter how it looks, or what it becomes, or what that version is. If it's to make new memories, you don't know what that could be. But when you come back, when you come out of it, it should be, man, that was great. I haven't seen Tommy. I haven't seen Karen forever. I feel like I know exactly what he or she is doing now, and I feel like that is accomplished.
Yeah.
I didn't know where the night was going to start. It ended when we said it was going to end, but we accomplished that goal of catching up.
Yeah. And it's like, we don't think of these experiences like in goal settings.
Yeah.
It's more like what this is doing is like allows you to grow those relationships in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Instead of having half experiences of that's just centered around the drinks that you're having or the meal. You're not really catching up. Like, we're not really, doing this thing. So it's just kind of being smarter about, like, I'm going to see this person or do this thing. This is why I'm doing it. So that's a good guardrail.
And I would also say, before we leave this, because I think that this is we don't want us to be, in this podcast, to be too, unreal, is that you don't have to announce to your group chat or your friends, hey, my goal for the night is to, have fun. It's more or less keep it to yourself. But then those experiences that you plan, if you say to your friends, hey, like, let's do this concert, let's do this music thing.
Yeah.
Just put that out there and know that my goal is for everybody to have a great time.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. But it's also fair to be like, okay, like, hey, just a heads up, I got to go at this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be unrealistic of like nobody in their normal mind
don't speak out the word. Yeah, this is the goal. Oh, okay.
Fun happens. It's not like, Okay.
Yeah. That was our first how, was creating that guardrails, or maybe generally like have that reason as to why you're engaging. I think the second was your idea around attitude, the attitude you bring.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because that attitude you bring will determine the result of what you're chasing.
Yes.
That joyful experience, or that meaningful conversation, or that ability to do your work well will be determined off of that attitude you bring.
Yeah.
Of bringing that, maybe it's a problem solver mentality. Maybe it's a, hey, I'm open to, or I'm curious about this person or this experience. I'm just going to experience it as is, or I'm going to do this hobby or passion to the best I can.
Yeah.
Although, I might not have all the answers or be to where I might think I should be. So it's the attitude you bring, which will result in that growth or in that meaningful experience.
Completely. And I think that from, our experience, something that I think happens and is just a reality of life is that, you go out with a lot of the same friends. You're with the same coworkers a lot.
Sure.
And it feels very college orientation to be like, hey, like fun facts. Because typically you're talking with these people all week. It's like there's not going to be all these new organic experiences or conversations. So that's where that attitude comes in of, hey, whether, whatever the thing is that you're doing with your friends, it's like having that open attitude to, okay, I'm here to make new memories. I'm here. If I see somebody at the bar or wherever that's I'm attracted to, or, I'm curious about, be okay with going up and having that new conversation, because like your attitude within that is, like I said, it's a very college orientation, but you got to go in and say, hey, I'm here to have new experiences and make new friends.
It will dictate the result.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was our third how that we were talking about in our what section? We had another. Mm-hmm. So the guardrails, our attitude.
Yeah.
You remember?
I don't know. I think it's more or less around, we mentioned I think the guardrails is where we start, right? And then it's the attitude that you bring within that. But I think it really is you mentioned what can happen when, like normal human beings, you don't always follow the plan. And a lot of times we talk about this third step being execution and the action. But I think what that really looks like is being disciplined within our spontaneity and saying, hey, like I said, I had a great time tonight, guys. It was awesome, but I actually do have a lot of stuff that I have to do tomorrow. I'm going to head out. Like literally, I'll text you when I get home. I had a ton of fun.
Yes.
But not trying to extend the night because you feel unfulfilled maybe or something.
Yes. It's like it was the idea around chasing
the dragon
versus attracting it. So it's like you have to understand that it's not something that can be chased.
Yeah.
It is something that you have to be open to through your attitude, through the guardrails you put in place. And if you are constantly seeking it via another drink, another bar,
another person,
another hour staying up.
Yeah.
Or it's the Netflix, another hour on your phone. It's like those things, although they're immediate gratification, won't be solving, that feeling that you're chasing. So it's like, how do you be a little more intentional about these activities? That way you can attract that experience or that growth that you're after.
Yes, completely.
Love it.
I don't know what we want to call that one. Just being open to attracting it.
Yeah, I think it's attracting it versus chasing it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through some of the whys and why we're talking about this today. Honestly, this is something that I feel like this topic has kind of been around for maybe a month, stewing within our heads.
Yeah.
But for me, really, over the past week was when it really came to fruition. And I think it will, too, for a lot of other people. Weather's changing. Summer's coming up, right? Maybe you've been kind of dormant over the winter. It's like there's going to be those times that you want to, you have a plan and, whether it's your workout and your work and your hobbies, then it's like, oh man, the beach looks great.
Sure.
Or, man, it's really sunny out. I'd love to go have, a back porch beer, etc.
Yeah.
All those things are perfectly fine. They're like, enjoy yourself. But for me, it's definitely about putting up those guardrails and having that third step of attracting it instead of chasing the dragon, which we've talked about on many other episodes, to say, okay, I'm fulfilled. That was awesome what we just did. I got to get back to work because I love the balance that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah. I think my why, I've just been in different periods of my life, or this could be weeks and days by periods of my life. I mean, where I've been, on that fully spontaneous spectrum versus the extremely rigid,
Yeah.
And not open to change.
Yeah.
I've just seen both, and it's something that I'm, I guess, aware of that I think this conversation helped with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my why of how I can be more intentionally spontaneous.
Love it. Let's go through a little bit of a recap. So today we talked about intentional spontaneity. Kind of what that looked like for both of us was, these times in our lives when we have this itch or we have, free time that we want to step away from this structured, rigid kind of lifestyle that we've set up for ourselves, but how often and easy it is for us to fall into the trap of, like either I don't have a good attitude towards, going outside of my plan, or I need to have this amazing, awesome time.
Yeah. And something else we talked about was from only living in one of those areas, we're going to be missing opportunities of growth from the spontaneous conversation, the new experience, or the, hey, I actually have a plan that's keeping me on track. So there's pros of both, but also cons that we talked about.
Yeah, I love it.
And then in our house, we came up with 3. So the first one was to have guardrails, to have an idea of our reason, of our why, of doing something, of meeting with someone, of learning this thing or doing this work, etc. If we can keep that top of mind, it will be impactful to be more intentionally spontaneous.
Completely. And then number 2, we just talked about your attitude when you're approaching these different times of intentional spontaneity. You have to come with the right attitude of, hey, I'm open to whatever's going to happen.
Yes.
Or if some things come up that throw off your structure, having the problem solving and the, okay, we can figure this out. I'm flexible. I have this balance that we are both craving in our own lives.
Yeah, love that. And our third was really we have to understand that these experiences, like these external factors, aren't things that we can just, that it's not something we should chase. It's something that we have to attract. So by putting these guardrails and that attitude in place, it will attract that experience that you're after. The joy, maybe it's growth, maybe it's something that you're learning. By putting that in and living those behaviors will allow you to attract that.
Completely. And as far as the whys are concerned, I really just talked about implementing more of this balance as summer comes around and I have that itch to jump out of maybe some of the progress that I've made by, having all this structure and recognizing that there's a time and place. And then once those guardrails are set in place, it's like, all right, time to walk away.
Yeah, that's very similar to mine. Mine was really just around kind of balancing discipline versus that carefree nature that I think we all have. So I want to be able to have both and tap into those opportunities instead of kind of living in one area where I might be dismissing another area of growth.
Completely.
And I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans. Thanks, guys.